I'm making this video as a response to jericomovie's latest and his self-response clarification video that science geeks don't see the limitations of empiricism, the inability of empirical evidence to prove positive claims, and to his general smugness about our lack of reliance on philosophy.
And hello to you. You can win the argument that I am a smug individual. Let's get to your real arguments.
I say this knowing full well that we can never be certain of anything 100%, as the matrix or solipsism are always possibilities. I am 100% certain that jericomovie is full of fucking crap.
Well, it's certainly a possibility, but here's the difficulty, is that you know we can be certain that we can't be certain about everything 100%, which is itself a statement of certainty. The convoluting factor here, I think, is the misunderstanding of what philosophy can inform us of versus what science can inform us of. It's true that science can't be certain of anything. That doesn't mean that philosophy can't be certain of anything. And so this statement, this truism that a lot of atheists have that we can't be certain of anything is simply false.
Furthermore, my opinion of philosophy can be encapsulated by the following expression. Philosophy is like sunscreen. Useful, but only when applied properly. For the most part, I'm going to address not the content of the videos, which are practically self-refuting as is, and instead focus on the implications here. Jericho has some beef with science geeks, and wants to show us why empiricism will never be good enough.
False. Science is actually the only way that we can inquire about the objective world. I'm going to posit you with this definition of science, and I'd be interested in your response. Science is the philosophic inquiry of the objective world. The notion that science and philosophy are in competition with each other, I think, is a misinterpretation, or a misunderstanding of what philosophy actually is. Philosophy is not the art of sitting on one's ass and coming up with bullshit. That's ideology. Philosophy is in the navigation of claims, not in the proclamation of claims. Certainly we can come to claims and these kinds of things, but in the end, if we are going to suppose the claim without an understanding of the reasoning behind it, the inferences behind it, the evidence behind it, we're going to be an ideologue and not a philosopher. The philosopher is more interested in the process by which we arrive at the conclusion than the conclusion itself.
Also, apparently philosophy will always own your ass. That's a quote, by the way.
And one certainly that I'm not going to defend to any great extent. All that I was meaning to say is that science is going to be a subset of philosophy. It's not a child sort of lost in the woods all by itself. It is philosophic in when we take evidence and engage in induction to come to theories about the universe. That's philosophic. It's philosophic to say, look, we have evidence here, therefore your claim can't be valid. That's philosophic. The whole scientific method is philosophic. Paradigm shifts are philosophic, and so on.
The real question here is, what do you turn to when a philosophical argument and empirical evidence are at odds? I, for one, go with science, and I suspect that most people, even the philocrats here on YouTube and elsewhere, will do the same. An example! You're on a jury deciding the fate of Subject A in the murder of Subject B. Physical evidence here is that Subject A's fingerprints were found on the murder weapon. A note was found in Subject A's house in his handwriting that he intended to murder Subject B, and there exists a videotape showing Subject A shooting Subject B 9 times in the chest at point-blank range. The counter-evidence is a philosophically well-articulated argument that Subject A could not have possibly shot Subject B. Innocent or guilty?
Okay, if we are to assume that the only justification the defendant has is that, in spite of all the evidence, my client could still be innocent, is to articulate an argument that, in the reverse sense, is available to the prosecution, which is to say, if the defendant had a bunch of evidence, the prosecution could rely on that same argument. This fact of uncertainty is a double-edged sword. It does not help the defendant over anything that the prosecution could offer. So the claim that this is somehow a refutation of philosophy is pretty unfounded. Because both sides have that same argument, the only one that has any evidence in addition, or arguments in addition to that given, is the prosecution. And in that, we would be justified in ruling that A, in fact, shot B. That doesn't refute philosophy. It's by vessel of philosophy that we could come to such a verdict.
Now that's an obvious example, and the real world is much more nuanced for the most part. However, the fact remains that empirical findings do not need to be 100% certain to be useful.
This is true, and again, I'm not supposing that science is like, the bastard child of philosophy. Science is the only means we have to understanding the objective world. Only means. Philosophy is not going to be able to do that without science. You see what I mean? And that's why I'm proposing to you that philosophy encompasses science, that science is an extension, an arm of philosophy, a subset of philosophy.
My glasses, for example, do not give me perfect vision, but they allow me to function a lot better than I do without. They also, at least in my science geek opinion, preclude the possibility that my eyes are somehow possessed or otherwise afflicted by non-physical interference.
Well, but you can't preclude it beyond a shadow of a doubt, because the means to your claim is affirming the consequent, that because the glasses work for you, therefore your eyes are not being possessed. I wouldn't suppose your eyes are being possessed either, though you could not preclude that possibility just because of the effect that you're experiencing. I agree, however, that it is very useful to assume and make many assumptions in the world that the things that happen in the objective world can be verified by science, and that goofy things like spirits possessing our eyes do not exist. But we have to make these assumptions with the philosophic recognition that we can't preclude its possibility. Okay, and I think what happens, it's a slippery slope kind of effect where you make that assumption, and we all agree that your eyes are probably not being possessed by spirits, though none of us can be certain, leads one thing to another into what is scientism, which is really what I'm arguing against. It's not science geeks. I like science geeks. What I'm arguing against, and who I think are really despicable creatures in that last video, was the adherents of scientism. Not if you like technology or you like Star Trek or something like that. You guys have all my love and respect.
Jericho mentions brain activity and says that science cannot say all mental activity is caused by the brain. An easy enough mistake for a philosopher, I suppose. You could look at the problem quite simply. We know that mental activity originates in the brain at least some of the time, and we don't know of any other mechanism which could account for it without invoking supernatural forces, dualism, the Matrix, etc. Now, I allow for the possibility that there's some other force at play here, but I, for one, and the psychological and neurological communities can back me up on this one, know of nothing else but the brain which can influence mental processes. If we are to consider other sources, we damn well better have some evidence for it. Until we do, there's no reason to assume otherwise, except perhaps for wishful thinking.
Well, most of what you're saying I think is fine, but at the same time, it doesn't refute my argument. I'm saying that because the conclusions that you're drawing here are the children of induction, we have to entertain doubt into the statement. Otherwise, the statement is false. Induction can only give conclusions that have doubt within them. So to say that all mental activity is accounted for by the brain is false. All we can say is that all mental activity might be accounted for in the brain, and this is the part I think you're looking for, we don't have any evidential reason to suggest otherwise.
That's how I view philosophy. It plays a role, yes, and even an important one, but it does not supersede or trump observation and or physical evidence, ever.
That's a philosophic claim that you could only hope to justify philosophically, but whatever.
Nor should it, nor will science geeks ever respect the arguments of someone who is so ignorant of science and its symbiotic relationship with technology, who nonetheless feels compelled to comment. That's all I have to say on the matter. Buddha smile upon you all.